All right. Good evening, dear students. Thank you very much for being with me tonight. It's a pleasure to accompany you once again. So, well, I am very much excited because tonight we're going to finalize with the theoretical aspects of the reading section. And then we're going to utilize the rest of our time tomorrow to practice, okay? So today's class is essential for us to have the opportunity to effect all our knowledge in tomorrow's class, okay? So let us go straight to our topic. Let me stream this very quickly, and then we're going to start. All right, where am I? Very good, more people are joining us. Great and great. Okay. Give me a second, please. A sec. All right, awesome. So as I say, we're going to finalize tonight with the types of questions, okay, in the reading section, and tomorrow we're just going to practice. So, well, we are live, and let us start. All right, let's go. Let me share my screen. Let's go. Well, as I told you, let us go straight to the sixth type of question, because it's the first one we're going to analyze tonight, because as you remember, in yesterday's class, we analyzed the fifth type of question, and now we're going to start with the sixth one. Okay, so let's go and start with that. Here we have it. So this is the sixth type of question, dear students, and this is called detailed question. Okay, what is the detailed question? The detailed question asks you about information stated in a small part of the passage. It only asks, what does the passage say? The correct answer does not necessarily have to be written in the exact same way as in the paragraph, but it will contain exactly the same information. Okay. This type of question, dear students, I think that you are going to get it very much rapidly, because in South America and Central America, I think this is the normal type of question we are used to. When we are in the university, for example, or when we are in high school, what professors normally do is that they take a book, right? They take a book and they say, okay, you're going to read from page 20 and to page 30, and your exam is going to be about those pages. So you study for an entire week, and then you come to the exam. What the professor does is, well, he takes a paper and says, in page 23, imagine that your subject was history. In page 23 of your book, we are discussing the French Revolution. When was the French Revolution, right? Or for example, in page 25, we are informed about the greatest representatives of the French Revolution. Who was the greatest representative of the French Revolution, right? Who led France to victory against the monarchy, something like that. And as you can see, when professors make those type of questions, they are simply saying, or they're simply asking you, what does the passage, in the case of the university, what does the book say about this, right? That is the question. When you think about it, that is the question. What does the book say about this? What does this page say about this? But in our case, the question will be, of course, what does the passage say about this? All right, that is the scenario. Well, what about this? Let us see the question. According to paragraph 1, which of the following is true of the late Cretaceous climate? In other words, what does this question say? It says this. It says, what does the passage say about the Cretaceous climate? That is how you should think about this type of questions. Although the question says, which of the following is true of the late Cretaceous climate? This type of question is basically, as I say, that is, what does the reading passage say about the Cretaceous climate? That is the question, okay? So you have to respond to this question. And in order to do so, of course, you have to read it. So in this case, you read the entire paragraph, right? Let us read it together, okay? It says, paleontologists have argued for a long time that the demise of dinosaurs was caused by climatic alterations associated with the slow changes in the positions of continents and seas, resulting from plate tectonics. Of and throughout the Cretaceous, the last period of the Mesozoic era, during which dinosaurs flourished, large shallow seas cover extensive areas of the continents. Data from diverse sources, including geochemical evidence preserved in seafloor sediments, indicate that the late Cretaceous climate was milder than today's. The days were not too hot, nor the nights too cold. The summers were not too warm, nor the winters too frigid. The shallow seas on the continents probably buffered the temperature of the nearby air, keeping it relatively constant. Well, that is a reading passage. Now, as I say, the question is basically, what does this passage that we have read, this paragraph in this case, say about the Cretaceous climate, right? And we have some options. Summers were very warm and winters very cold. Shallow seas on the continents caused frequent temperature changes. 3, the climate was very similar to today's climate, or the climate did not change dramatically from season to season. Okay, let's have some recommendations before. The only thing you must do here is to read all the necessary parts of the paragraph to find the answer. It could be the entire passage, as I told you, or just the relevant portion. Once you found the portion, remember that the correct answer will express the same information. Maybe the words will be different, but the content must be equal. This is very important. Here I want to emphasize a little bit. Imagine, coming back to our previous illustration, that your textbook said that Napoleon Bonaparte was the greatest representative of, or I'm going to say it this way, it was the greatest, let's say, military officer of the French Revolution, okay? Imagine that your textbook about history said that Napoleon Bonaparte was the greatest military officer of the French Revolution. Now, if your textbook said that, and you had a question that said, who was Napoleon Bonaparte? And instead of writing, he was the greatest military officer, you write, he was the greatest captain of the French army, will your response be incorrect? I ask you. No, right? Because, I mean, he was military officer or captain are basically synonyms, right? I mean, they're exactly the same. You are meaning that he was part of the army and he was a leader. That is what you're trying to say, right? It doesn't matter if you say in your response, this illustration I'm giving, he was the greatest military officer or he was the captain of the French army. Doesn't matter. It's the same. And as I say, in this type of question as well, the response must not necessarily use exactly the same words that the passage gives you. And of course, it will normally not do so, because imagine that the response says exactly the same with the exact same words as in the passage. It'll be too easy to identify, right? So even if it uses slightly different words, it doesn't mean that, as I mentioned, it's wrong. If it contains and expresses the same information that the reading passage presented about the topic, is the correct answer, okay? Wrong answers typically confuse you by linking some ideas found in the passage erroneously. Those answers will also use some correct vocabulary, but they will not actually respond to the question. So which one is the correct answer here? I tell you, dear students, the correct answer here is the climate did not change dramatically from season to season, option 4. The climate did not change dramatically from season to season. Why? Because that is what the reading passage says about the Cretaceous climate. Not with the same words, yes, but it says that. Where? Here. There is a part here almost at the end that says the days were not, talking about the Cretaceous climate, right? It says the days were not too hot, nor the nights too cold. The summers were not too warm, nor the winters too frigid. What is this telling you? It's basically telling you that there was a stability, right? From season to season. That is what it's saying. Not with those words, yes, but if it says that summers were not too warm, but nor winters too frigid, and actually the last sentence says that the shallow seas on the continents probably buffer the temperature of the nearby air, keeping it relatively constant. So what it's telling you is that the ocean imitated the temperature of the air that was constant. So the entire, those sentences or that part of the paragraph is telling you the climate did not change dramatically from season to season. Not with the same words, but obviously, I mean, as I said, those sentences mean exactly that. If summers were not too warm, nor winters too frigid, it means there was some stability, right? So it didn't change. That is the correct answer. What about the first option? For example, it says summers were very warm and winters very cold. This is completely in opposition to what the reading passage says, right? It's totally wrong. Why? Because the passage says that summers were not too warm, nor the winters too frigid, excuse me. But here it says that they were warm and cold, so wrong. The second one, shallow seas on the continents cause frequent temperature changes, right? This is also supremely wrong. Why? because what it says is actually the contrary, that the temperature affected the sea, right? Because it says here the shallow seas on the continents, excuse me, probably buffered the temperature. They imitated the temperature of the air. So it's the contrary. And the same for the third one. So as I say, you just have to ask yourself, what does the reading passage say about this? And when you find out what it says, you look for an answer that expresses the same information, and maybe not with the same words, but it's fine. Any question, dear students, about this type of question? Please tell me. Araceli, Sergio, Roy, Abigail, Cecilia, Jorge, Anaí, Adriana, Mariana, Miguel. Questions?
It's clear.
Okay, thank you very much, dear Jorge.
It's clear
What
for
about the
me
rest of
too.
you? Thank you very much, Miguel. Very good. Questions? Nope. Okay, very good then. Great, let us move on. All right. Question number 7. Let's go with this one. This is called negative factual information, dear students, okay? And this type of question will ask you to identify something that is not, pay attention, that is not textually stated in the passage. In order to complete this task appropriately, you must read the entire portion you are required to, and to pay attention to all details, okay? Very good. Let me show you the example. I think that you're going to understand this manner. Let me exemplify this way before I get into this. Have you ever played the game Intruder in when you were in your childhood, when you were a child? Intruder. I'm not sure if it is popular in other parts of the world, but it's basically they give you a picture of some sort of set of items. For example, a picture with a lot of fruits. The picture contains apples, oranges, bananas, grapes, whatever. And there is an intruder within that picture. For example, a car, right? A car. I mean, a car is a machine. What does a car have to do with a lot of fruits like oranges, bananas, grapes, etc.? When you play that game, your objective, your final aim, is to say intruder whenever you find intruder, el intruso. So as I say, you win the game when you find the intruder. In this case, as I say, if the images represent a lot of fruits, but there is a car within those images, of course, doesn't have to do with it. And you say intruder is the car. That is the objective. And in this type of question, dear students, it's exactly the same. Because what is going to happen is that you're going to receive a bunch of options, excuse me, that represent accurate information of the reading passage. But there is one that doesn't represent, excuse me, such accurate information. And you have to look for the intruder, the one that doesn't belong to the correct answers, okay? Let me now show you the illustration. In paragraph 4, all the following questions are answered except, and let us read the paragraph before we read the possible responses. It says, the satisfaction with conventional explanations for dinosaurs' extinctions led to a surprising observation that in turn has suggested a new hypothesis. Many plants and animals disappear abruptly from the fossil record as one moves from layers of rock documenting the end of the Cretaceous up into the rocks representing the beginning of the Cenozoic, the era after the Mesozoic. Between the last layer of the Cretaceous rock and the first layer of Cenozoic rock, there is often a thin layer of clay. Scientists felt that they could get an idea of how long the extinctions took by determining how long it took to deposit this 1 centimeter of clay, and they thought they could determine the time it took to deposit the clay by determining the amount of the element iridium it contained. Well, that is the reading passage. Now here we have some options. And as I say, 3 of them, because as you can see, we have 4, 3 of them are going to be topics or ideas that were, listen to what I say, that were indeed discussed in the reading passage. But there is one intruder that is a topic that was not discussed in the reading passage. In this case, you have to look for the intruder, not for the correct answers. You have to look for the one that doesn't represent information discussed in the reading passage. That is the only thing you have to do. Let us see the answers. Is there something between the rocks of the Cretaceous and Cenozoic? Why were scientists interested in determining how long it took to deposit the layer of clay at the end of the Cretaceous? What was the effect of the surprising observation scientists made? Why did scientists want more information about the dinosaur extinction at the end of the Cretaceous? Those are the questions. All right, let's go with this. Read the entire portion, you are required to, while paying attention to every detail. That is my first recommendation for you to approach this type of question. Afterwards, do not forget that the correct answer must not be textually stated in the paragraph. What you're doing in this case is to look for textual absences, something that is not included in the reading passage. Some answers may be rationally inferred from the passage, but this doesn't collaborate to respond. Focus on textual absences. Look for what is not in the text, okay? You are looking for the intruder, something that is not part of the reading passage, okay? I repeat, you are looking for the intruder, something that is not part of the reading passage. And as I say, in this set of possible responses, you have 3 responses that are part of it, of the reading passage. In this case, topics that have been discussed in the reading passage. And there is one that is an intruder that has not been discussed here in the reading passage. You're looking for the intruder. That is going to be your correct answer, the intruder, okay? Very good. So which one is the intruder here? Which of these questions or topics was not discussed in the reading passage? Well, I think that if you think about it, the correct response here and the intruder will be the last response. Why did scientists want more information about the dinosaur extinction at the end of the Cretaceous? And I'm going to explain you why. For every single one of the other options, there is a sentence that discusses that idea. For example, the first one, is there something between the rocks of the Cretaceous and the Cenozoic? There is a sentence that discusses this. Which one? Look at the middle of the paragraph. It says, between the last layer of the Cretaceous rock and the first layer of Cenozoic rock, what happens? There is often a thin layer of clay. So it does exist. There is a sentence that discusses this part. Is there something between the rocks of the Cretaceous and Cenozoic? Yeah, there is a sentence that says, yes, there is something. What? A thin layer of clay. Okay, so this is not the correct answer because, as I say, it's part of the reading passage. You're looking for something that is not part of the reading passage. What about the second option? Why were scientists interested in determining how long it took to deposit the layer of clay at the end of the Cretaceous, right? And there's also a sentence in the end of this passage that talks about that. Look at it, it says, scientists felt that they could get an idea of how long the extinctions took by determining how long it took to deposit this 1 centimeter of clay, and they thought, etc., right? So why were scientists interested in determining how long it took to deposit the layer of clay? Why? Because they wanted to get an idea of how long extinctions took, right, by determining that particular measure. So as I say, well, there is a sentence that discusses this topic, and the same for the third one. But nonetheless, in the fourth option, there is no a sentence that discusses what? Why are these scientists interested in dinosaurs extinction? Why do they want more information? There is nothing here in the passage that tells some information about that. Maybe they are interested because they are receiving a prize for that, or maybe they're interested because this is going to help save humanity or something, but for some reason, this is not discussed here. Therefore, as I say, this is the intruder. We are told in this passage everything they're doing in order to obtain the information, but we are never told why do they want the information in the first place. So as I say, this is the intruder. This is not part of the reading passage, and therefore is the correct answer. That is exactly what you have to do every single time. Any question, dear students, about this type of question? Please tell me. Marceli, Jorge, Miguel, Sergio, Roy, Miguel, Cecilia, Anaí, Adriana, Mariana, questions? Questions about this one?
No, no questions.
No question.
Thank you very much. Thank you, guys. What about the rest of you guys? No questions?
No questions.
Okay, thank you very
No
much.
questions.
Okay, thank you. Fantastic. There we are. Okay, we can move on then. Type of question number 8. Okay, this is a very interesting type of question, and it's called summary question. Okay, this type of question asks to select 3 or more statements that summarize, listen to this, the main ideas within the entire passage, not just one paragraph or two paragraphs, the entire passage, okay? 3 statements that summarize the main ideas within the entire passage, okay? Now, this will typically be your last question and must be responded with all the information you've grabbed from the passage. Remember that in every single reading passage, you will have 10 questions, right? 10 questions per passage. Therefore, you have question 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And maybe you were wondering about this. There is no manner to say which type of question you're going to receive, because it is not the case that you're going to receive one question of each type of question in your exam. That is to say, maybe in your 10 questions of the first passage, you don't receive any vocabulary question. That is possible. Or maybe you don't receive any reference question, but you receive a lot of vocabulary questions or negative factual questions. As I say, that is not determined. That is aleatory. Okay? There's no way to know what type of question you're going to receive in each part of the questions. But now there is a type of question that will always appear to you on the exam, and that will always be in the same place, and it's this one, the summary question. This summary question, this type of question, is always going to be the 10th question. The last question you're going to respond about the passage. It doesn't matter if it is the first, the second, or the third passage, or even the fourth passage, right? If you receive the experimental version, the last question for your passage, doesn't matter which one is always going to be a summary question, okay? And that's the reason why I tell you, you should respond to this question as the last question. You shouldn't force yourself to go and respond it as your first question. Why? Because you need to have a glance of the entire reading passage for responding this, as your task is to find the statements that summarize the main ideas of the entire passage. So as I say, follow the natural inclination and respond this question as the last one, okay? Now, here I have an example. Look at my screen. And here there is something actually even more interesting. The mechanism, dear students, you're going to use to respond this type of question is different from the rest of questions you have in the exam. Why is this different? For this very simple reason. It is different, these dear students, because in this case, you don't have to pick your response, or you don't have to choose your response by clicking on your response and choosing it or selecting it. What you have to do is to drag your response within a reply box. For example, look at my screen right now. As you can see in the middle, there is a box, right? That is in blank. And below that box, as you can see, you have some statements, right? What you have to do is that within this box, you're going to have the chance to drag, arrastrar, 3 statements, those statements that are below, that, as I say, summarize, in your opinion, the main ideas of the passage, of the entire passage, not just of first or second paragraph, of the entire passage. Let me show you the video. This is the video. As you can see, you have the statements, and what you do is you drag the responses within the reply box, right? You are not clicking on them, you're not choosing them, but you are dragging the responses within the reply box, okay? And as you can see, that you have more than 3. You have actually, how many? You have 6 possible statements, but there is a space in the box, in the reply box, for merely 3 of them. And that is the difficulty of this question, that you actually have to choose merely 3 of these statements that summarize, as I say, the main ideas of the entire reading passage. And that is actually your criteria. How can you determine which ones you're going to introduce or which ones you're not going to introduce? By thinking and asking yourself, which of these statements summarize the main ideas of the passage? Because many of these statements, trust me, you're going to find this in practice, are going to summarize irrelevant details of the passages. And you know that for this question, you have to find the statements that summarize the main ideas, okay? Let's go to some recommendations. This question, as I told you, will require you to drag your answer to a reply box. You are not required to click on your answer, but to drag it within this box. Don't forget, this question is worth several points, and you should respond it once you have responded all the other questions. As I told you, not all questions in the exam have the same punctuation, let's say, or the same qualification. Some of them are worth more points than others. For example, this question, as you can see in the instructions, is worth 2 points. Other more simple questions are worth 1 point or maybe half a point, as the vocabulary questions, for example. But this one is always going to be way, way worthy. Therefore, you should try to respond this one correctly and to have this as one of your priorities, okay? As I say, how can you respond correctly? Very easily. In order to correctly choose your answers, you must be very precise in choosing only those answers conveying the central ideas of the passage. As I say, you have more than 3 statements, but you can merely introduce 3. You have 6 options, but you have to pick up 3 of them and to introduce them, to drag them, remember, within the reply box. How do you choose between them? You choose by dragging those that, as I mentioned, represent and summarize the main ideas, the central ideas of the passage. But what are the central ideas? Let us discuss that. Central ideas, let us discuss and let us start by what is not a central idea, okay? Central ideas are not those ideas that began the passage, are not necessarily the first ideas mentioned in the passage, okay? Not just because it's the first thing you read in the passage, it means it is a central idea. That is wrong. Also, the ideas or the points that ended the passage, as I say, are not necessarily as well the central ideas. Please don't commit that mistake, okay? Also, they are not details. They are never details. Details are things that are quickly and concisely mentioned, right? Not something that the reading passage discusses as such, but simply mentions in a tremendously rapid way, right? Those are not central ideas, not main ideas. Also, and this very important, are not those ideas that you remind the most. And this is something that, let's say, hit me very much when I meditated about this. I used to believe that main ideas were those ones that stick to my mind, that I reminded the most, that I remembered the most. And I actually was wrong. Why? Because not just because you remember something of the passage more than any other idea, or because you have it on mind clearer than other ideas, that is a central point or a central idea of the passage. Maybe you remember it because it was funny, or because you found it to be curious or interesting, or because maybe you knew about it before and you made a connection with that. But as I said, not because you remember something of the passage, it means that is the main idea. Okay, that is not something that you should assume, but as I say, it's a wrong perception. Not necessarily. If you remember it, it is the main idea. Now, what is the main idea? Main ideas or central ideas are those ones that have triggered all discussion and data. You know what is trigger, right? Those ones that have provoked, las que provocaron discussion data to be added to the passage. Those are the central ideas, the ones that start discussions, provoke data, provoke discussion to come up to the table. You must choose those ones conveying the topic that all the rest round about. Imagine that they are the suns of our solar system. We round the sun, right? We surround that particular star. And these central ideas are also stars in that sense, that the rest of information data surround them, okay? And that is how you, that is how you should think about this type of central ideas as stars, because they are always surrounded by the rest of information, discussion, and data that was proposed in the reading passage, okay? Those are central ideas. And now that you know what are central ideas or main ideas, you should, as I say, for this question, drag within the reply box those statements that summarize those main ideas, not details and not what we have discussed, okay? Very simple. Remember, you have to drag. I'm gonna reproduce the video once again. You have to drag the response within the reply box. You don't have to, as I mentioned, you don't have to pick it and that's it. No, you have to drag it, okay? You drag it, you let it fall down, and then you can drag another one. And as I say, you have a maximum space for 3 of them. You have to choose those ones that summarize the main ideas. Questions about this type of question, dear students? Please tell me. Questions, doubts? Yeah, please, Araceli.
So I remember that you mentioned that for the reading section, you shouldn't be reading, it was last a suggestion, but you shouldn't
Yes.
be reading all the passage. so you can focus on the like answering the specific questions.
Yes.
But in this case, don't you think that maybe we can skip maybe a paragraph that is important to answer this
Mhm.
question?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much for the question, Arcelia. Yeah, and it's a very good question. Now, remember that what I told you was, as you said, the idea of the charge strategy is that you don't read the entire passage at first, but that doesn't mean that you don't read it entirely, because when you use the charge strategy, at the end you are going to read the passage, but the point is that you are not going to read it entirely as a whole before you respond to questions or before you go to respond to questions, but you're going to read it as you respond to questions. So normally, 90% of the time, dear Arcelia, and for all of you, dear students, you are indeed going to read the entire passage. But as I say, you are not going to read it at first. You are going to read it anyways, but not at first. You're not going to waste your time reading it entirely without responding to questions. But as I say, you're going to read it as you respond to questions. And if in the very much unlikely case that you don't read one of these paragraphs, because as I told you, it happens sometimes that the questions do not ask about a particular paragraph, you're not going to have problems with this question. Why? Because in this sense, the question is also prepared and organized in the manner that it doesn't mention information that they were not asking for in the questions that you had previously. And that is a very good point you made. Maybe there is a main point in the paragraph we didn't read. And yeah, that could happen. But as I say, the questions, that is what it is found in ETS website, are arranged in this particular type of question so that you don't miss any important part. Because the questions in the previous questions, question 1 and question number 9, they are going to ask you about the main ideas of the passage. Therefore, when you come to this one, to the last one, there is no way you're not going to know the main ideas, because all the questions are going to be asked so that you identify at the end in this question the main ideas. Okay, so that is what I could say about the question. Is that fine, dear Araceli?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you very much. Any other question, dear students? Any other doubt, hesitation?
I have a question.
Please, yes.
We have to drag always 3 answers.
Yeah, you have to always drag 3 answers. Maybe in your exam you receive the experimental version and maybe you have to drag 4, but if any doubt remains, as I say, as you can see here, okay, I'm going to, as you can see, every single time when you are about to respond this, there are some instructions, right? And as you can see, the instructions in this case say, drag your answer choices to the spaces where they belong. To remove answer choice, drag it back. To read the passage, view text. And here, in the first instructions, as you can see, it says directions. An introductory sentence for a brief summary of the passage is provided below. Complete the summary by selecting 3, right? And it's with capital letters, 3 answer choices that express the most important ideas in the passage. So even if it happens that in your case, they ask you to draw 4 or 5, I don't know, or maybe just 2 statements, all of that you can confirm it and you can make sure of it by reading the directions. But as I say, normally I've never listened of somebody who didn't receive the order of dragging within the reply box merely 3 of these statements. But if you want to make sure and you are thinking, well, maybe I don't want to risk anything and I want to make sure how many I have to include, you can read the directions and those are not going to bite you. Okay, is that fine?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, teacher.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you very much. Any other question, dear students? Any?
Yeah, Carlos, what about
Yes.
if we put the answers in a wrong position? Maybe
Okay.
the A is in the last position. I don't know. It's according
Yeah.
to the sequence of the paragraph, right? But
Mhm.
what about if we thought that is not correct? They are going to grade individual in an individual way, or it's a overall grade for all?
Thank you very much for the Miguel, for the question, dear Miguel. This is actually a fantastic question. And I think that in this case, the response is very simple because the order or the sequence that you expressed it, in which you draw and introduce the answers to the reply box is not actually important. You can actually make it this manner, CBA or ABC. But if all these answers were correct, that is to say, those ones were the statements summarizing the main and central ideas of the passage, it doesn't matter the position you place them into the reply box, they are going to be correct and you're going to receive your full score. The position in which you introduce them doesn't matter. What matters is if you get the correct statement, because as I say, you have 6 of them, and they normally ask you to drag 3 of them. If you drag them, the 3 of them, the 3 that are correct, within the reply box, then you're going to have the full score. It doesn't matter the position. Maybe as I say, if the correct responses are ABC, but you introduce them as BCA or CAB, it doesn't matter, as I say, because you have the 3 statements that are correct, ABC, because they summarize the main and the central ideas. If you included them, fantastic. That is going to be your full score. The position is not actually relevant. Is that fine? Do you hear me go?
Yeah, thank you. It's clear now.
Yeah, fantastic. My pleasure. Any other question, dear students? Any other thing? No?
No question.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, we can move on then. Fantastic. Very good questions, the ones that you have done here. Very, very good. Very much content with them. Well, type of question number 9. This question is called sentence insertion question. And this question will ask you to insert, an extra sentence to one of the passages you have read. Okay. When you click on, this is not important. Here, let me show you. Well, basically, this is think about it this way. Think about this question as if you were asked this. Imagine that ETS comes to you and say, okay, dear test taker, we have this paragraph. Read it. You read the paragraph, right? And they say, now that you have read this paragraph, we have something for you. We have a sentence. We want to include this new sentence that is not in the paragraph within the paragraph. We want to include it. We want to include this because our writers were not capable of including it, but we believe that you are able to do it. So please take this, include it, and introduce this sentence that we are giving you in the best place you find. Where this sentence best fits, you should include it. Where this sentence better complements the entire passage or the entire paragraph in this place, please introduce it, insert it. Imagine this is what is happening in this question. Is, as I mentioned, as if ETS were telling you, please, we want you to introduce this sentence within the paragraph you received. You have to introduce it where it best fits, where it complements the entire reading passage, okay? Now, let us see the question. It says, in paragraph 5 of the passage, there is a missing sentence. The paragraph is repeated below and shows 4 letters, A, B, C, and D, that indicate where the following sentence could be added. And here we have the sentence. Consequently, the idea that the earth in the boundary clay came from microscopic meteorites cannot be accepted. As you can see, dear students, that will be the extra sentence they want you to include. And here you have the passage. Let us read the passage. It says, it has not been common at Earth's surface since the very beginning of the planet's history, because it usually exists, in a metallic state. It was preferentially incorporated in Earth's core as the planet cooled and consolidated. It is found in high concentrations in some meteorites, in which the solar system's original chemical composition is preserved. Even today, microscopic meteorites continually bombard Earth, falling on both land and sea. By measuring how many of these meteorites flow to Earth over a given period of time, scientists can estimate how long it might be, or it might have taken, to deposit the observed amount of air in the boundary clay. These calculations suggest that a period of about 1 million years would have been required. However, all the reliable evidence suggests that the deposition of the boundary clay could not have taken 1 million years. So the unusually high concentrations of air seems to require a special explanation. Well, as you can see, this is the paragraph, and they are asking us to insert this sentence, this extra sentence on the left side within it. So where can we introduce it? We cannot introduce it anywhere. they have facilitated our task because they are giving you 4 specific spots or places where we can introduce and, as I mentioned, insert this particular sentence. What are those spots or places? As you can notice, are A, B, C, and D. Those spaces or spots that are highlighted, and they also have these letters included, A, B, C, D, are the available spaces or spots for you to introduce the sentence. You cannot include it in any other part, but in those spots, okay? Now, the idea or the question is simply, where could we introduce the sentence and to make it fit the best? That is what you have to do. Now, some recommendations. Your objective in this question is to find where can the rendered sentence best fit in the paragraph. Sometimes it will be evident to you because something will appear to lack in the paragraph. This is the first scenario. Sometimes your students are going to read, before getting into this question, you're going to read the paragraph. And what is going to happen is that you're going to say, but there is something missing here, right? Because like it appears as if there would be an introduction, an interruption of the reasoning train or the logic of this passage or paragraph weird. And then you're going to realize that it was actually on purpose because sometimes, as I say, they simply take out sentences, and that makes it very easy to respond to the question because, as I say, it's as if a sentence were lacking, missing in the paragraph, and when you read it, it's super easy to identify it. If this happens to you, if this first scenario appears to you, fantastic. Well, as I say, you have to place this sentence in that space or spot where you consider there is something missing. And as I say, you're going to notice that super clearly and rapidly. Nonetheless, there is another scenario. Paragraphs often sustain themselves without the alluded sentences. Therefore, you will sometimes have to find where does the sentence complement the paragraph harmonically. As I say, sometimes some paragraphs stand by themselves. They don't actually need any other sentence to make sense because everything as it is written seems to be very much logical, seems to be well written, connected, makes sense without any other sentence. When that is the case, when nothing is missing in the paragraph, what you have to do is to introduce this sentence where you could complement the paragraph, where you could complement the ideas or the points made in the paragraph. As I say, in the first instance or scenario, you're going to be filling a missing part of the paragraph. In the second scenario, and I think that this example actually belongs to the second scenario, in the second scenario, you're going to complement the paragraph. You're going to use this paragraph, or this sentence to make it better, to make the paragraph be even better than before, okay? That is what you have to do. Now, in order to correctly choose your answers, you must choose a place within the paragraph where your sentence does not repeat already mentioned information. Moreover, where it doesn't disrupt the reasoning train of the person. Your objective will always be to fill a missing part or to complement, as I say, where the context allows you to. This is a matter of, first of all, filling something out if you identify there is a missing part. And as I say, these are always the easiest cases. If this happens to you, you're going to know it super clearly, trust me. You introduce a sentence there where you know it's missing. If you perceive, everything seems to make sense without this sentence, what you have to do is to complement the paragraph, to make it better. Where could you introduce and insert this particular sentence to make this paragraph even better, to make it more complete, right? That is what you have to think. In this case, I think that is the case. We have to make this paragraph even more complete and even more reliable and well written because nothing seems to lack here, nothing seems to be missing, So let us think about where could we include it. In this case, dear students, this sentence should be included in option C, in the spot or place C. Why? Let me tell you why this is the correct answer. This is the correct answer because at that place, we are complementing our paragraph with something that, although it was not necessary to be included, it complements and makes it even clearer and more reasonable. Why? Because if you notice from spot A, what happens is that this entire reading paragraph, we read it, right? It's about a theory of meteorites. Let's say that meteorites bring with themselves iridium, right? This material. And when they fall to our surface, to planet Earth, it happens that this iridium attaches to our planet. and scientists believe that they can use that iridium in order to measure how much time it took to these elements to be deposited in our planet. And they say that 1 million years was the necessary amount of time for these meteorites to fill our planet with this iridium. But from spot B, they start to object that hypothesis. They start to contradict that hypothesis because they say it's impossible that meteorites actually fall down in 1 million years. And there is no evidence for that. There is actually evidence, they say, that this is not possible and that it couldn't have taken 1 million years. So we have, think about this as being an argument. We have a premise one that says they needed to have 1 million years, but that is not very likely. And there is actually evidence for saying that it was not possible to have these meteorites filling our planet with iridium in 1 million years. So those are like the two premises, right? And in an argument. And when you have two premises in an argument, what comes later? The conclusion, right? But here in our paragraph, there is no conclusion. What happens is that it goes directly to another topic. And this sentence, if you read it and if you think about it, is a conclusion, right? Because it says, consequently, por lo tanto, the idea that the ear or iridium in the boundary clay came from microscopic meteorites cannot be accepted. And this conclusion, where could it fit? Where could we introduce it to make sense with the information we have here in the paragraph and to make it better, to complement it and to complete it? Where we could introduce it is in spot C. Why? Because here, as I say, it becomes a conclusion of the arguments presented against these meteorites and against this theory, and says, consequently, the idea that the ear in the boundary clay came from microscopic meteorites cannot be accepted. And normally, when we state a conclusion about a subject, I think that you agree with me here, what you do is that as you have stated your conclusion, you move on, right? To another topic, you say, okay, well, so, and you continue, right? Imagine that you say, well, we conclude that aliens do not exist. So you move on to another topic, right? And notice what happens right after spot C. So the unusually high concentration of ear seems to require a special explanation. It's moving on to another topic. Why? Because it comes after a conclusion. And that is the best place to introduce the sentence because it complements the passage. Although it didn't need a conclusion, now we can add the conclusion there and the passage, as I say, becomes even more complete. That is what you have to do, to complement or to fill a missing part. Any questions, dear students, about this one? Questions? Doubts? No? No questions? All right, very good. No questions. Let's go to the last type of question. This is, dear students, by the way, let's say the ugliest brother of all the types of questions in the exam. Why? Because this type of question almost never, almost never appears on the exam. Trust me, almost never. It didn't appear to me in both opportunities I took the exam. I have talked to people that are also part of this business and they have never received it. But we know that it exists, okay? The point is that it exists and we have to be prepared for it if you receive it, if you are of a very rare percentage of people who receive it. This is called complete the table question. This question will ask you to organize the ideas in a certain categories, or in certain categories, excuse me, with relationships. You will have to drag the answers, which believe corresponds to the category boxes you will have. Commonly, you will be able to drag 2 of these sentences within each box. This is similar to the summary box, to the summary question, I'm sorry. Why? First of all, because you're going to drag your responses. As you can see here on the left side of my screen, I have 2 boxes, okay? And this is here the difference, that in this case, you don't have 1 box as in the summary question, but you have 2 of them. And within these boxes, you have some titles. In one of them, it says faunal analysis in Cuba and California. And in the other one, you have radiocarbon rating in 2 creeks fossil forest. You have to think about those titles as if they were categories, okay? Think about them that way, as if they were categories, things that define a category. And as I say, what you have to do, and here you're always going to have some statements, as it happened also in the summary question. It's similar to the summary question, actually. And the only thing you have to do is you read these statements, and you have to drag them within the box that you consider, dear students, that you consider, let's say, represents this statement with its category. For example, when I read this passage, it's the one that we have been reading, right, about dinosaurs. For example, radiocarbon dating tracked the fossils to 13,370 years before the present. I remember that this sentence had to do with radiocarbon dating in Two Creeks fossil forest, because as you can see, it talks about fossils. And this category of radiocarbon dating in Two Creeks fossil forest fits this particular statement, right? It has to do, is connected to this statement. So as I say, what you have to do is you take these statements, you read them, and you drag them, okay, se los arrastra, within the reply box, in this case, within the category that you consider, as I say, is connected to the statement. In this case, this one, radiocarbon dating track fossils, belongs or is connected to the category of Two Creeks fossil forest, so I would drag it within that box. What about, for example, this one, the third one? Over 70 tests were done on fossil samples. This one, I remember, is something that was discussed in the California and Cuba analysis, because this reading passage that we were reading talked about two experiments, one in Cuba and California, and another experiment in a fossil forest. So as I say, I remember that these 70 tests were mentioned in the context of Cuba and California. Therefore, I know that is its category. So I take this statement, I drag it within the category that belongs to it, that is connected to it. 70 tests were done on fossil samples, was connected in the passage with Cuba and California. Therefore, I take it, I drag it, and I let it down within the reply box. That is exactly what you do with each of these ones. And as I say, sometimes it will tell you, you only have to include 2 or 3 of them in each reply box. So maybe you're going to have some of them that are not going to be included. If that happens to you, okay, as I say, include the ones that relate to these categories, that are connected to these categories, and that is exactly what you have to do. Anyways, very unlikely you're going to receive this one, but as you can see, it's super easy. The only thing you do is you read the statements, the categories, and you unite them, you connect them, as we have always done in different tests, right? It's not something difficult. Any question, dear students, about this type of question? Questions, doubts? Araceli, Abigail, Jorge, Miguel?
No, it's clear. Thank you.
Thank you
It's
very much.
clear.
Thank you, guys. Sergio, Roy, Anaí, Mariana, Cecilia, questions?
No, it's clear.
Okay, thank you very much. All right. No questions then. Fantastic. With this, we are finalizing them. As you can see, the theoretical aspect of this section. Tomorrow is just going to be practice. So please don't miss tomorrow's class. We're going to apply everything we have learned. We're going to put it into practice. And I think that it's going to be a great manner for you to measure your level in this part. Okay, so please don't miss tomorrow's class and accompany me to fill your assistance. Okay. And please help me with your kind responses with the traditional poll, okay? Know that I appreciate it very much. So please help me with that. And I'm gonna take your assistance. Let me get into it. If you have any question, commentary, please express it, okay? My here. Since inform. Great, so it's here present Fabiana Salguero. What about Ramirez Camila? Okay. Quiroga Adriana. I saw Adriana here. I know. Well. All right, let me continue. What about Alondra Lisette? Okay. Zúñiga Sergio. Quiroga José
Here.
Miguel. Oh, Sergio, you're here. Thank you very much.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Miguel, as well. Very good. Anaí Estefanía.
I'm here.
Thank you very much, dear Anaí. What about Jorge Alberto?
Here.
Thank you very much, Jorge. What about where am I? Abigail Graciela.
Present.
Thank you very much, dear Abigail. What about Roy Bryan?
Present.
Thank you very much, dear Roy. What about Araceli Patiño?
Present.
Thank you very much, dear Araceli. Oscar Samuel. Okay. What about Baca Mariana? Thank you very much, dear Mariana. And finally, Cecilia.
Present.
Thank you very much, dear Cecilia. Here you are. Is there anybody that I have not mentioned? I listened that somebody got into.
Hi, Carlos. I'm sorry, I have a problem with my internet.
Adriana, right?
Adriana, yes.
Yes, I got you. I remember you, and I got you. Don't worry.
Thank you, Carlos.
Oh, my pleasure. Okay, there you are. I got you. Thank you very much, dear Adriana. Okay, great. Thank you very much, dear students, for your kind responses. I'm gonna see you tomorrow, okay, in order to practice. And as I say, have a fantastic night and come with all your strength and passion tomorrow. Okay, see you tomorrow.
Thank you. See you tomorrow.
See you
Goodbye.
tomorrow.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much. See you later, guys. Bye-bye.
See you tomorrow, Carlos.
See you. Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye. See you.